living like this was so simple, so easy. It's like I was happier with a backpack on, covered in dirt and sweat, than I ever was just living paycheck to paycheck, being a consumer. It just didn't add up anymore. I was like, what? My happiness without anything is far greater than my happiness with everything.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Out and Back podcast presented by Gaia GPS. I'm your host, Andrew Baldwin. I picked up the trail name Shanty during my thru hike of the AT last year. Now that I'm home after finishing my thru hike, I'm lucky enough to be interviewing top outdoor adventurers. People like PCT record holder Heather Anderson, who we talked to in our last show. This week, though, we're hanging out with Thomas Gathman, who goes by the trail name the Real Hiking Viking. Viking served as a Marine Scout sniper, and then when he came home from his second tour in Iraq, he hiked the Appalachian Trail and basically never went back. He hiked the CDT, the PCT, the AZT, and so many others. I'm really excited for this episode because we're going to talk to Viking about his journey from Marine sniper to pro hiker. We're also going to find out which of the Triple Crown trails he's dying to get back on, where he's planning to go when the outdoors open up again, and so much more. Viking is a humble, fun, badass, free-spirited dude, and we hope you enjoy our time with him. So let's get right into it. All right, everyone, we're here with the one and only Real Hiking Viking. So glad you're here, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad that this is going down.
Yeah, I mean, man, there is so much going down right now in the world, and there's so much you've been doing over the last few years, and especially last year with backpacking. I mean, part of me doesn't even know where to start, man. There's just so much to be talking about here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into the backpacking world.
So we can go back to I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, from 2006 to 2010, in the infantry. I did 4 years in the infantry with 2 combat tours to Iraq, and 2 of those years, and one of those tours being in a scout sniper platoon operating with covert operations, clandestine missions, and doing surveillance and target acquisition and that kind of stuff. So when I call myself the Real Hiking Viking, the Viking part doesn't come from the aspect of, the DNA of the Scandinavians, which I'm not sure. I have never been, gone down that genealogy, but my family does, for the record, my family does hail from Germanic and Irish and Scottish regions, so there's a chance for that. But the Viking part comes from the idea that Marines are warriors, so that's what we call ourselves. Army, they're soldiers; Navy, they're sailors; Air Force, they're airmen. The Viking part comes from the beard that I've been growing over the years, which, by the way, I just got it cut recently because I needed a little change. But
for shame,
for shame.
I was going to hit you with like 30 questions about the beard at the end.
So we'll get into that. We'll get into that, yeah. But the warrior aspect and the drive to like push myself comes from the Marine Corps, and that's where the Viking aspect really comes from. And in addition to the beard that I had been growing, so 4 years of that, and then that rolled into, I got out of the Marine Corps with a honorable discharge, which is always nice to say.
Awesome.
And then after that, I was attending Bucknell University, just kind of because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I joined the Marine Corps later. I was age 23, and with a failed stint in college the first time around. And after I got out of the Marine Corps, I really just thought to myself, like, hey, I might not know what I want to do, but I'm 27 and I should utilize my ability to go to college and try and get a degree so that I can make, have the opportunity for better jobs down the line, even though I had no idea what the possibilities for where I want a career to go were, and kind of fell backwards into the outdoor industry while I was attending Bucknell University.
Backwards. So how'd that happen?
So a guy that was a friend of mine who also was a Bucknell graduate, who was living in Lewisburg at the time, was departing Lewisburg and was taking a job at Nike headquarters. And he's like, hey, dude, he's like, I've been working part-time at Vargo Outdoors, which is also Vargo Titanium. And it's located right in my hometown, right where Bucknell University is, literally below my apartment where I was living. So he's like, I'm leaving town. I have this job. He's going to be looking for somebody. You should take the job. And I was like, okay, makes perfect sense. Like, I would love to have a part-time job and while I go to school. And also, it sounds interesting and intriguing to me. So yeah, let's do it. And then that was my in on the outdoor industry in 2000, I want to say 11. I started working for him. And that led to being asked by my boss if I wanted to go down to Damascus, Virginia in 2012 to attend Appalachian Trail Days, which is, if
Nice.
you don't know, the country's like largest trail event on like live trail event, like a festival essentially.
Yeah,
Thousands of hikers descend upon Damascus every May to have a big old party and to have workshops and get together with their friends, and people are hiking in and people are traveling in, like prior hikers, future hikers with aspirations to do the AT and all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, I agreed, of course, to go down and set up a vendor booth and sell Bargo titanium gear directly on the trail. Literally, the trail goes right in front of his booth in Damascus, and that was my first like in person. Like, hey, holy crap, this Appalachian Trail thing isn't just like this idea of a trail. There are people walking from Georgia to Maine every year in this big mobile community that I was just like, my brain like exploded about the idea of it.
So you would never, because you're from Lewisburg, PA, you said, like where
Yep.
Bucknell is.
Yep.
So actually not too far from the Appalachian Trail where it goes through in PA. So had you ever actually done any backpacking trips or done any hiking on the AT before trail days?
Not on the AT. No, I don't think I've ever knowingly hiked on the Appalachian Trail ever in my life. And if I had, I don't even think I had unknowingly. The only real backpacking I had ever done, I want to say like 2 separate overnighters, but both of them were on the Loyal Sock Trail in north central PA, kind of like north of like Watkins Glen, or not Watkins Glen, Ricketts Glen area. So, and that was all when I was like a teenager, and I was a Boy Scout growing up, and I enjoyed hiking in the outdoors and like the ideas of backpacking, and would have loved to have gotten into it, but it never really materialized to like have it become a focal point of my like life. The desire to want to do and be that was there. Just the opportunity hadn't really presented itself, and then it did. Trail Days 2012 opened my eyes and really like set a blaze inside me for the desire to seek out this possible adventure. I was talking to these through hikers that were 500 miles into their through hike in Damascus, and like, yeah, they were gross, they were dirty, they were stinky, and I was like totally enamored by it. These guys were a quarter of their way, not even a quarter of the way done with their adventure, and I was just gonna drive back to Pennsylvania and go live another summer of like going to music festivals and like waiting for the next semester to begin, and like this event hit and it changed the trajectory of everything.
So tell us about that trajectory then. So you've gone to trail days, you've become completely enamored with what you've seen, what you've been exposed to there. So, what happened next then? Where did you go?
I was driving home, and I was not living with my parents, but my parents lived several blocks away. And I called my dad up and I say, "Hey Dad, I'm going to drop out of school and go hike the Appalachian Trail next year. What do you think of that?" And he's like, "Sounds great." He's like, but he like tried to get me to understand a larger picture with it. He's like, how can you make it something that's more than just you? So I thought, my dad was like, "So how can you make this hike of yours something that's bigger than you?" And I was like, "Well, I would love to like maybe do it as like a fundraiser for like benefiting veterans." And it turned out to be, I went down the road with it a little bit, made a website, made all these things to figure it out. And when I was doing that, I came to the conclusion that I should try and find somebody who may have already had experience with this, to try and seek some counsel as far as like what can I avoid, like what pitfalls can I avoid when trying to do this. So I Googled some stuff about veterans and long trails, and I came across Sean Gobin, who was at the time just had done his own through hike in 2012 with his buddy, where they were raising funds to purchase adaptive vehicles for veterans that were amputees from combat. And I contacted him and got some advice about how to make my own thing. And months went by. But around Thanksgiving time in 2012, Sean Govin called me and was like, hey, dude, he's like, how would you like to be the first veteran involved with the Walk Off the War program? And I was like, well, can my good buddy who I was going to do the hike with, who was a machine gunner in my company and squad, can he join with me? And it was my buddy Adam Bouts, and he and I were the first two veterans on the inaugural Warrior Hike Walk Off the War program in 2013. And there came to be like another 7, 8, 9 people that were a part of it. I think there may have been like 10 to 13 of us total in the first year. And that was a really cool experience. So between when I called my dad from Appalachian Trail days, 9 months later, I was on the trail,
Wow.
out of school, and I didn't know that this was going to end up being my life at that point. It wasn't until I got to about Pennsylvania, I got off trail for like 10 days. A, I had a little knee injury that I needed to recover from, but B, I knew I was going to get back on trail and finish the hike, but I had to deal with my civilian life because I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to do the whole Triple Crown. Like I realized it in the first half of that trail that living like this was so simple, so easy. It's like I was happier with a backpack on, covered in dirt and sweat, than I ever was just living paycheck to paycheck, being a consumer. It just didn't add up anymore. I was like, what? My happiness without anything is far greater than my happiness with everything. So why not just live super meagerly while being happy? It just was a no brainer. So I got off trail and put everything in my house into storage, didn't renew the lease, and that was that.
You just kept going. Like, I mean, so you came back on the trail to Pennsylvania, you finished going up to Katahdin on the AT, and then what was it? You went directly to the CDT?
Yep. Yep. Loved it enough to jump right from the AT to CDT. So the AT like made me fall in love with backpacking, but I'm a kid from Central PA that, barely has spent time in the Rockies and definitely has never spent any time backpacking in the Rockies. So the CDT made me fall in love with like what I would characterize as like true wilderness adventure. Like open my eyes to a larger idea of what backpacking is and what like backpacking in nature and wilderness is. And I really fell in love. I haven't really hiked on the CDT minus the Colorado Trail and a little, in Wyoming in the winds. I have been chomping at the bit to thru hike that trail again. Really, it's the one everyone's like, "What's your favorite trail?" And I'm like, "There's no question, it's the CDT." There's the most amount of wilderness. There's the most amount of like animal life. There's the most amount of like isolation, and it's the Continental Divide. So that's my favorite trail by far. Even though I've been hiking all over the place since then, and all these other trails that I've done even more than once. The CDT still, I'm just like waiting for like the right time to like, I don't know, hit that trail hard.
So you think about the others, the PCT, you've done the Arizona Trail, part of the Florida Trail.
Yep. I've done the PCT. I attempted the PCT 3 years in a row. So it was like right after the CDT was done in 2014. I went and attempted the PCT northbound in 2015 and made it halfway, did a flip because I started it a little bit later after I had done part of the Florida Trail and the whole Arizona Trail as precursors to that. And there was something going on that made me flip. I did the Sierra High Route in the middle of it. I went and did the Wonderland Trail off trail. I was doing all these things. I was probably stretching myself way too thin. And then once I finally did flip up to the border, this fire hit that just was blanketing all of Washington, closing everything down, closing Crater Lake down. It was just like the whole West was on fire. And I just was like, F this, I'm out with all the.
And what year was this again?
Still 2015.
2015.
Which leads into the, like, what I would call what really kind of elevated my, for lack of a horrible way of putting it, it makes me sound like I feel like I'm more important than I am. What really led to the rise of my star, so to speak, was I went and thru hiked the Appalachian Trail southbound in winter. And that started at the end of 2015. So here I was had this incredible hiking year, all these miles, I mean, I really went for it. The CDT was great, but in 2015, I just started going everywhere and hitting every trail I possibly could and having just adventure after adventure after adventure. And then when you have a year like that, you come home for Thanksgiving in Central PA and you're just sitting there, you're like, what the hell am I going to do in winter? I didn't have a plan for winter. In fact, I did have a tentative plan to go hike the New Zealand Te Aurora trail that winter, but the guy that I had kind of planned to do it with had a hip problem and he couldn't do it. Like he ultimately needed hip replacement surgery. And this is the guy I finished the CDT with, for the record, and we wanted to get back out and do some miles together. But so my plan to go to New Zealand crumbled, and I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs over Thanksgiving in Central PA with like no real plan. And I am a guy who does not do well sitting around as I sit around during COVID-19 quarantine. I am like, I'll lose my mind if I don't stay active. And just where, if you can put yourself in my shoes, having a year like that, and there you are feeling like you're like stuck somewhere, the wheels started turning. And do you guys remember when Trauma and Pepper southbound through hike the PCT in winter?
Yes.
That was the winter before. I had, through connections, been friends with Trauma, and I reached out to him because I had this idea from what they did on the PCT southbound when they did, which, by the way, winter southbound on the PCT is something that's even still far beyond my skill set. I am not a winter mountaineer. I'm not. The only people who even on record attempted it died trying. And they were just like, here we go. I mean, these guys are skilled. These guys are like backcountry professionals, winter and summer, and they know what they're doing. They're smart. They're not careless. They're not reckless like me. And but so the Appalachian Trail isn't like the PCT in the sense that it's like the pinnacle of danger in winter at all times, and avalanche this and isolation that, and roads closed. And so I'm sitting there in Thanksgiving at my parents' house, and I'm like, what am I gonna do this winter? And it just popped. I don't even know how it popped into my head, but it definitely was stemming from Trauma and Pepper's inspiration the previous winter. And I was like, what if I thru hike the AT southbound in winter? And I called Zach Davis up because he was a good buddy of mine at that point in time. We had just thru hiked, we just been on the Colorado Trail together, and so I call him up as a friend, and I say, Zach, what do you think about me thru hiking the AT South in winter? And he was just like, you would be a god among men if you did that. Like,
I mean, well, that was the thing. I did the AT Sobo last year. To me, the idea of just doing the northern part of the trail, forget even like how challenging the Smokies were in parts of Southern Virginia, how tough they were. Mm-hmm. I just think about how crazy like parts of Southern Maine and the Whites would be in winter.
Yeah. So when I told him that and it was within 5 minutes in my head of posing that idea out loud to him that I was just like, I know I'm going to go do this. I just know. Because that's what my brain the wheels started turning, like, what would I need to do? Like, how quickly can I get ready? And mind you, when I'm thinking this, I have never even winter camped. Never.
That answers my follow-up
question. I didn't even have the equipment. Like, I didn't have any of it. I'd never done it. I was just doing summer and shoulder season stuff. And like, in my brain, this felt like a very dangerous thing to do, and for one particular aspect. And it was not because I'd never done it, and not because I'd be doing it alone. It's because I sweat a lot. I sweat a lot, and that's like danger numero uno when you're backpacking or mountaineering in isolated places when the temperatures are below zero.
Yep.
And that was my biggest concern. But at the time of deciding to do it, it was just like, manage that later, figure it out later. All my brain started doing was, how do I prepare to go begin? Hearing other people's experiences, what they think is things I should be doing in terms of preparation, and like, what gear worked for them in these situations, yada, yada, yada. So within 10 days of having that conversation with Zach, I was on a bus to Maine within 10 days. So by December 4th, I was in Baxter, walking south, basically.
Did you get to go up Katahdin? I thought Katahdin always closed at a
It's
certain
not.
time.
I had to fill out all kinds of safety forms and backcountry winter camping forms. I basically had to inventory every piece of gear that I had so that they could know whose gear it was when they had to go looking for the body. Essentially, is where that comes from.
Wow.
But I did not get to summit Katahdin because it was a logistical nightmare for for how I went about starting the trail in terms of scheduling with Baxter State Park. As when I was on the bus up to Maine, I called Baxter State Park and said, "Hey, I want to go summit Mount Katahdin tomorrow and start walking south." And they're like, "Well, we can't really do that. You have to wait a week for us to process this and to get the information to our backcountry rangers and yada yada." So they needed a time window in order to process all of that. And I was like, "Well, I'm not waiting a week. The more I wait, the crazier winter gets in Maine, and I'm trying to get south ASAP. Like, like now. I need time is against me right now. So in order to mitigate that like week long waiting period, I came up with a plan. All right, I'm going to northbound the 100-mile wilderness so I can just start. And then I will hypothesize what day I think I'm making it to Baxter or what day I think I'm making it to Katahdin to summit. So I misjudged because I was carrying so much gear, and I was like, I thought, oh, I'd be able to walk this fast because my legs are still strong. But like then there was snow and ice and all these things that slowed me down. And with that amount of food that I was carrying, I thought I could make it in a week, and I made it a half a day too late for my permit for the summit permit. And so basically, I got there the evening of the day that I thought that I would have to start that morning. So I couldn't just start hiking up Katahdin at night, like in winter after hiking for a full day to get to Katahdin to begin with. And I didn't want to be the asshole that was like just gonna quote unquote poach the summit. I don't like doing that. I don't like going against the rules, especially if I'm going against the rules. On top of that, I'm broadcasting everything I'm doing. Like it would be suspicious if I was just like,
That's the thing. I was thinking the
yeah,
exposure.
I don't do that. I'm not going to do that. And so instead of waiting another week to summit with a new permit or whatever, I just walked out of the park on the road and got picked up at the entrance where this plows will plow up to. Got picked up there, went back to Monson at the end of the 100-mile wilderness and started walking south because I just had to get south. Was it annoying I couldn't summit Katahdin? Yes. Did I care as far as the technical nature of through hiking the AT all in one? No, I went back and did Katahdin later. Yeah, so I'm hiking through New England, dealing with 32 degrees to negative 50 degrees to 40 to 80 mile per hour winds to pure whiteout conditions on top of Moosilauke where my goggles are fogged up. I can't see anything. Like it was intense. I mean, the fords in Maine alone were horrific.
That was going to be my question about the 100-mile wilderness, the fords you had to go through, because that's where you have the most in all of Maine.
Awful. It's awful. Going in barefoot.
Oh,
barefoot with my pants off. And mind you, there's only 8 hours of daylight, so most of these are happening in the dark,
Yeah.
And like a headlamp's not helping you see where your lead foot, numb foot is going on a slippery, icy rock. Like it was always like playing with fire, rather ice when you go in barefoot and have to get out the other side and put which I have had at the time, a 3-sock layering system on to go into boots. Since like I have to get hiking immediately to try and get the blood flowing back to my feet, and it'd be like miles until I could feel my feet again. It was a mental struggle at all times.
I will never complain about the cold nights that I had in the Great Islands ever again.
I really don't know how I did it. I'm not gonna lie. Thinking back on it, I'm just like, how did I do that? That's insanity. Like, who would subject themselves to that level of stupid stuff? But at the time, like I wasn't really thinking about quitting at any point in time on that hike, other than the first full day in the 100-mile wilderness. The first full day. So I had camped that night, and I had snow on my first day. It snowed on me several inches, and then that first night I was like, oh, I'll make a fire and get my clothes dry, and that was the first and last fire I had. There was no point in wasting energy on a fire that was so difficult to maintain, so incredibly, and that was like before the harshness of winter really set in. It's just it was just a waste of time, waste of energy. It was just getting your sleeping bag as quick as you can and peel your wet ass clothes off and throw them in your sleeping bag in a waterproof container before they froze solid stiff.
And then put them on again the next morning.
And put those on in the morning before they froze solid stiff as well.
Yeah.
Every day.
Crazy.
Every day. So going into town by the third or fourth day was integral to survival, because that's how much I sweat. You think like not only am I sweating through my clothes, but there's still, like, even though it's cold, there's moisture in the air that is just like adding to that. So my jacket on the inside is lined with ice. So my arms I have to wear, like, I wore a merino base layer, then a vapor barrier, which with the amount of sweat I'd be dealing with, even the vapor barrier was kind of just a formality. It was it was there for my brain to be like, this is helping, but really I don't even think it was, because everything was just wet, But but really what it was, I think, if anything, was help cut the wind to my actual skin. But then I wore like a poly synthetic merino blend sweater over that, and it was just like a hood, and then there was a hat, and then I wore another hood, and then there was a mask, and then sometimes a goggles. And then, oh man, it was crazy. It really was.
Dude. But yeah, I was gonna say, so you've done your AT Sobo winter hike, you've done the PCT, you've done the CDT, you've done the long, like, just 2019 alone, last year you were on freaking fire. You did the long trail twice, if I remember, or two attempts at it.
Yeah, I attempted the long trail twice.
Yeah,
they both were miserable failures. So
yeah, I want to get
don't say I did them, because I didn't.
Well, and I want to get to that. But like, just going down the list, I think you did what? You did the Jordan Trail, of course.
I did the Jordan Trail. So in January I attempted the long trail in winter with snowshoeing it, miserable fail, and then after that it was Jordan Trail. Like went over there by the end of February, I want to say.
What motivated you to do something like so different from hiking you would do in the USA or Canada? Why the Jordan Trail?
Well, it's actually a pretty simple answer. They invited me to come do it basically free of charge, as a way to get exposure to my audience, which is obviously a wide sweeping audience of through hiking and backpacking enthusiasts, in the U.S. And I'm sure I have lots of people in other countries following me too. But they definitely wanted to get their product, their trail, in front of a lot of eyes. And I, fortunate for me, they found me and they asked me, and I was available and definitely wanted to. Like, I have not been back in the Middle East since my time in service, and obviously that time was not recreation.
Recreation, yeah.
So I wanted to go and explore that region and that culture, as a civilian, and especially as a outdoor athlete, and it was just kind of the perfect situation at the time, and I thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of being over there, and the people, and my experience, and it was an unbelievably beautiful place, and just was cool to be back in that region and have a totally different experience than my first time there.
Awesome. So you came back from that, and then what was it? Did you do the Hayduke Trail?
Attempted the Hayduke Trail, and mind you, when I flew back from Jordan direct to Denver, and in less than 48 hours, I was in Moab, like, buying my food to begin the Hayduke Trail. And the 2019 was a train wreck year for me, actually.
I'm looking at the
basically been hitting
list,
home runs for like 6 years. And then 2019 came by and just like punched me in the face in like many ways. It was just like getting beat up by Mike Tyson, basically, having never boxed before. No, I had a lot of adversity last year, which it builds character. It certainly does. But the Hayduke on day one, I was off. I was cross country in Arches National Park on day one of the Hayduke, and I was getting close to hiking into Moab. Like there's like I think it's like 26, 30 miles to get it to hike into Moab from the northern border of Arches National Park. And I was like, I'm gonna hike into Moab on day one. You know, I had my hiking legs and I was going ultralight, and I was like getting close to Moab, but there was this. I took a like an off trail crazy like cliff traverse where you're doing like kind of class 3 and class 4 stuff to get
Right.
down. And right before I began descending down this kind of cliffside, I pulled my phone out to take a picture. And by the way, I was carrying paper maps, but my phone had everything on it, and I pulled my phone out and fumbled it, and it fell and started cartwheeling off the sandstone cliff and took a 100-foot tumble down and and I had my AirPods in, and I heard my AirPods disconnect from the as if in midair falling, and I'm like, no! Just watch this thing cartwheel off the cliff, and I was like, I am screwed. Like, I just was like, I went and found the phone somehow, luckily, but I had to go figure out how to get a new phone, and it took me off trail for like 10 days until it was a nightmare trying to get my phone backed up and then have to like submit the insurance claim to get a new phone. It just was a process that took way longer than I wanted it to, and I only had a 4-week window from when I was starting the Hayduke to when I had to be at Appalachian Trail Days for like business stuff with Mountainsmith. And I don't, if you don't know how long the Hayduke is, it's 800 miles of like
Right.
intense, rigorous backpacking through very, very desolate, isolated canyon country, and it's not for beginners. It's not even for intermediate. It is an expert level hike, and to do that in 4 weeks, you have to have everything go perfect. And on day one, shit hit the fan, and it wasn't even proverbial. It was a fun adventure to deal with that. So I just wanted to get in as much quality backpacking in as I could on the Hayduke before I had to fly back east. So it became just like cherry picking beautiful stretches of the Hayduke, and it was a great time. That we finished with a 1-day traverse of the Grand Canyon after hitting like Bryce and I don't know, a bunch of different places.
Well, Hayduke goes, I think, through isn't that the one that goes through all the national parks in Utah?
Yep, it hits every single national park in Utah, as well as the Grand Canyon.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
awesome.
I actually was my plan is to still do the Hayduke this year, and I probably would have done it this spring. I was choosing between doing the Hayduke this spring and doing the Grand Enchantment Trail this spring, but here we are. Cuckoo Bird and I did have a contingency plan to actually do the Grand Enchantment Trail together, which goes from Phoenix to Albuquerque, more or less. And we were going to go out and basically drive and bury caches for ourselves so we could adhere to COVID-19 guidelines and principles for not going into town and not, overwhelming their, these small towns, whatever. That was like, how do we get outside? How do we go do a hike and still like not get Corona? That was
that's
going to do it. I mean, at a certain point, I don't know. Like, I feel this need to set an example to like, I'm not an exception to any rule. I'm a nobody, this is a global pandemic that, if anyone thinks they're above anybody else, that's where things start getting out of control in terms of everybody thinks they can go hike and, if the Hiking Viking is doing it, then I can do it, and yada, yada, yada. And I didn't want to be the guy to pretend that they were better than other people that have different feelings on the matter.
Yes. And where are you riding out the COVID-19 right now? Are you in Pennsylvania?
I am. I'm in my hometown of Lewisburg, PA. Yep. I was hiking more towards at the beginning. I was hitting the gym at the beginning before gyms closed down. And then it all changed so rapidly that I've been inside. I've been inside. I've been trying not to eat too much, but I've definitely been drinking a lot. And but I've also luckily so I had ACL and meniscus surgery in November, which was how my 2019 year ended. I bought myself a PlayStation 4 Pro when I had surgery so that I could like not be bored out of my mind.
So it really does sound like COVID-19, you're really taking the steps, social distancing. And I know that backpacking and outdoor activities are still allowed in a lot of states, but it seems like we're seeing a lot of cases where trails are getting really crowded. And as a result, it's still creating a lot of exposure. And it's like what we've seen with the ATC. Sandra came out and she said, specifically everyone needs to stay away from the AT right now.
Yep, yep.
Um, and so
And there's other trails to hike in PA where I know that people aren't going to be on.
mhm.
Um, I thought about that, like, oh, I can go through like these like shorter distance trails that are like 60 miles, 100 miles, like 150 miles, like, and believe me, I want to, I really, really do. And at towards the beginning, before things rapidly started changing, it just doesn't feel like the time to be, doing things for recreation. I don't know. I'm just thinking about my family and my closest friends and relatives, and I don't know. I'm not. I need to wait this out to really make more rationally informed decisions. Personally, I
Yeah.
mean, like 20 years ago, I would just say "F it" because I just was a kid that didn't care about consequences. But as a 37-year-old man now, and I understand that there are consequences to all our actions, and I don't want to be the one making the wrong decisions that affect people's lives potentially.
Yeah.
So including
Yeah.
my own, for that matter. Yeah,
Agreed.
it's weird. It's weird, and I'm just figuring it out one day at a time, and I'm just trying to not lose my mind one day at a time. But then again, so many other people in so much less fortunate circumstances than I am.
Yeah. So I guess, and I think that's a really good way of looking at it and approaching it. I guess so. It comes to the main question. There's so many of us who are taking the same responsible approach. So, what are you doing to stay motivated? Like,
Okay, well, so for the first so what felt like spring break initially, we're all like, oh, like here, where everybody's like FaceTiming and Zooming and like let's drink is essentially where like let's have a party distant like social distancing via computers and smartphones. That for the first couple of days it was like that. I'll be honest, like we were having a good time, and then it's like,
yeah,
well, that's not sustainable, and like we got to figure something else out. So then it became like, okay, um then there was the video games, and it's like, well, I can't do that every day. And mind you, right before this all began, since week 1 of January, I have been working out like a madman to try and come back from this ACL surgery, because I wanted to have this big year in 2020 coming to, I was going to call it my redemption year for all these trails that I fumbled and failed upon, and redo them and annihilate them. And so I was on a tear in the gym and in rehab, physical therapy, and then the gym shut down. And that was my everyday, my every waking hour and all my sleep was like completely a symbiotic thing with making sure my body was right every day. So for almost 2.5 months, I was just like knocking it out of the park and like really, really in shape. And now here I am. I
yeah,
tried doing a couple of in-house workouts, and it's just not the same. I don't have weights. I don't have like a treadmill. I know I can go run outside and all, but like the motivation is getting was low to do those things. So I'm looking into clearing out my parents' garage and creating a CrossFit gym in my parents' garage right now. But I don't know how much it's going to cost. I'm not like an uber wealthy person by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but like I'm beginning to get to the point where I'm like, okay, my new productivity gears are in motion, and how can I make the best of this right now, besides just drinking, playing video games, and zooming with my friends. And I do so much better mentally when I'm physically exerting. And that's why through
yeah,
hiking in this backpacking world works so well for me. It's because it's like a singular focus that's so simple, but also is my life and is determines my entire schedule. It's like the Marine Corps was the beginning of like putting my energy to focus. And then it turned into through hiking, and it was like, oh man, not only is it like I can focus on this thing that I enjoy, and it's in the outdoors, and it's therapeutic, but it's also like physically healthy for me too. So I lost the thing that keeps me physically healthy, and then I lost the thing that I can do even when I'm just around town to be physically healthy, and and so it's a struggle for me in that respect. But I mean, I'll figure it out. I'll power through for sure. It's not gonna ultimately destroy me in ways that are insurmountable. So
Yeah.
I'm taking steps right now to figure out how to positively spin this in the best way possible. The only issue becomes, as with everybody's dealing with, is how long is this going to last?
I mean, I honestly have no idea. And that's the thing that's so amazing about all of this is
Yeah,
just, I don't think anybody knows how long
yeah.
this is going to
I'm
go.
in good
Because
spirits. That's really like where I'm at with it. Like I'm in good spirits about it. I'm very realistic about it too, and I'm prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. That's for sure.
yeah, and I think that's a good way to look at it. And I think that's the main thing that I think we could all take away from is I love your point of, you figured out what makes you happy, what keeps you in
Yeah,
balance,
yeah.
and you're actively going out and doing what you need to do to get it.
Get it.
So two other things, I mean, regarding, COVID-19. So I think we talked about a little bit earlier. I mean, are you still making plans for the summer for maybe the second half of the year?
As soon as this opens up, I am gone. I am immediate. I will literally. My backpack is packed right now. It's ready to rock.
Yeah.
And yeah, depending on what time of summer it is, depends on what mountain range I go to have some fun. You
If you
know,
could be anywhere, like if this thing ended tomorrow, I know it won't, but if you could be anywhere, where would it be?
well, the only place to really go begin that's not the AT would be in my opinion, in the Southwest, which would be like trails like the Arizona Trail, the Grand Enchantment Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail. But I've done I've done all those except for the Grand Enchantment Trail. So I mean that's my plan was to be going to the Grand Enchantment Trail. That was an 800-mile hike that I was going to try and do in like 4 or 5 weeks, and then I think I was gonna roll out to like maybe like the Tahoe Rim Trail, or like depending on how the high country looked in Yosemite, maybe the Yosemite High Route or the Sequoia and Kings Canyon Basin route. Those are like things that like I haven't been back to the Sierra since I think 2017, when I finally on my third attempt through hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and that was the last time I was out in any of those states, in any of those ranges, in 2017. So shoot, that's been 3 years now, and mind you, I love the Sierra. Like I've done the Sierra high route twice. I through hiked the Sierra from like stem to stern like 5 times in a 3 year period,
Awesome.
in various ways and routes and all that kind of stuff. There's also, I think there's a possibility for do you know what a lowest to highest route is? Do you know what that is?
Is that like like the seas to summit route in North Carolina, where low point to high point are like going
Yes,
from like Death
yes.
Valley to Mount Whitney?
There you go. That's what it is. Yeah.
Nice.
There's also would be a possibility for like Trans San Diego, like a Trans San Diego County route. I forget what it's called technically, but it's basically like the whole entire width of the San Diego County. There's a hike that goes from like east to west that you finish at the ocean. I'd look into that
Nice.
for sure. And then I definitely was gonna redo the Wind River High Route, Skirka's version, which I wasn't able to complete last year. Uh, the Fifner was on my list to do, the Fifner Traverse in Colorado. Yeah, I don't know. There's just, I mean, basically, as many things as I could cram in, I was just gonna start like plucking them away without any like real break in between. It was like get off trail, clean my clothes, clean my body, breathe for a second, regroup, get my food, and then go again wherever I got to go, however I got to get there. It was just like just nonstop action.
Hmm.
Um, so that because I'm getting over this ACL injury, which by the way, it's healed, but it doesn't feel 100%. Like I need to go do a shakedown multi-day strenuous hike. Like in PA, I was gonna go do like whether it was the Laurel Highlands hiking trail, which is a 75-mile long trail, or like the Loyalsock Trail, which is a 60 or 70-mile long trail. I did the Black Forest half loop in a day, which was 24 miles, 22 miles. The full loop is 42 miles. It's beautiful up there. People don't know that northern PA, and especially the Pine Creek region of northern PA, is absolutely stunning. And the water up there is absolutely gorgeous. And like, I don't know, man, those woods they're beautiful woods. The hemlocks and red pines all over the place. There's birch trees, there's oak trees, there's maple trees. It's just gorgeous. It's really, really pretty. The beauty of what I do is, I can pivot on a dime with what I like, how my life is set up. Like I could, like, if things don't work out with doing one thing, I'm able to turn on a dime and do another thing. Like if one trail doesn't work out, I have such freedom to be able to maneuver within my decisions.
And that's freaking awesome. That's freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
but I figure let's end this on a really good, like fun, positive spin for the audience. I want to ask you a few general hiking questions. And more importantly, I want to ask you some beard questions.
Okay.
So what's your luxury item?
My luxury item, I would have to say, would be a like massive battery pack. I mean,
multiple, yeah.
It's like, if you know milliamps per hour, if you know like the size of batteries in your phone I have a 26,800 milliamp per hour battery pack, which you could literally kill somebody with it. You could beat somebody up with this thing. It's like a brick. So the reason I have that is because I like to, consume audio. I like to shoot video, take lots of pictures, post lots of stuff when I have service. Like I also charge various other devices too, depending on what I'm doing. And yeah, so I would say that's my real luxury item, is being able to use phone juice at my like, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be like, oh, I gotta ration my battery right now. I don't ever want to have to think, am I gonna run out of battery right now? No, I'm not, because I have a brick the size of like a red brick. Yeah, so that's my luxury item.
Cool. So then, with you listening to music all the time, if you had to listen to one song on repeat for an entire through hike, what would it be?
Oh man, I don't listen. You ask a question like that, I have to say, I don't do favorites. I don't do favorites with movies. I don't do favorites with people. I don't do favorites with like, just I can't. I really just there are too many things out there. There's too much content. There's too much to choose from, and I mix it up so frequently that I won't pick a favorite. Not even for this podcast. You can't make me.
All right.
I'm in Pennsylvania. You can't.
All right.
But I will say, I will give you a genre that really allows me to get in the groove when I'm alone and through hiking, and that's house music.
House music.
It has this beat that just goes and goes and goes. And when I hike hard. I hike like it's a workout. I hike like it's, how many miles can I get in today? That's like if all things were even and I'm healthy and the trail's in front of me and the world is my oyster, I'm trying to throw down 30, 40 plus miles every single day, And the way to do that for me personally is to just like get that beat going, and my legs are moving to that beat. 100 beats per minute, 110 beats per minute. That's my sweet spot.
Nice.
Nice. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I switch it up and listen to different music because you'll burn yourself out on anything, obviously. But that's that constitutes quite a big, I'd say a majority of my music listening while I'm in the physical act of hiking.
Biggest hiker meal you've ever had?
Okay, so I'm in, where the Notch Hostel is.
Yeah, right in just west of Franconia Notch, before Kinsman Notch.
You got it. And there is a restaurant, and I can't remember the name of this restaurant, but there's a restaurant in, I think, Lincoln, or if it's not Lincoln, it's North Woodstock, and they offer a 5-pound burger with like French fries and coleslaw and a big tall drink. And if you can eat all of that, it's free. Have you ever even seen a 5-pound burger, held it with all the
I had a
fixings on it and the bun to match it and all that.
I had a 3-pound burger when I was in Hot Springs, and it was like the biggest thing I'd ever seen. So I can't imagine.
I was two normal human sized bites away from eating everything, and I just couldn't
Uh,
do it. And the problem was that I didn't know I was going to be doing that. These two other hikers that wanted to take me out that weren't on the trail. Of course, I was the only one on the trail at this point in time. This is the winter through hike, mind you. And
mhm.
they came out of the blue to the hostel and be like, "Hey, we want to take you out for a meal because you're crazy," you know. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." The problem was I didn't know they were taking me to eat a challenge meal, and I had eaten right before that. And they're like, "No, no, no." They're like, "No, no, no. You're the hiking Viking. You can eat this." They're like that because that's what I would do. I don't know if you're like that was a staple of like my town stops was showing people the amount of food that I would be eating. And it wasn't even for a challenge. It was just like, this is what I'm eating. And it's like 2 meals at least, like 2 full meals with the sides and the fixins and everything. And it was just because I was burning so many calories in the snow and the cold that I required it. And plus I just wanted to, be happy, which
Yeah.
I'm happy when I'm eating lots of food. And, but so they took me out there and I attempted it and I failed, and it's okay because I ate that burger later that night. Whatever I didn't
There
eat.
you go.
I'll someday, hopefully, if I ever go through like the AT again, which I think is if the world goes back to normal, I think that's a possibility that I through hike the AT again because I love it. It's my first long distance trail, and I'll probably give it a shot again if they're still making that burger.
And I'm actually starting to wonder, man, I wonder if I missed the opportunity to have that burger when I was in, because I took a
You
double
did.
zero when I was in the
You
notch.
missed
So,
the opportunity. If you didn't try it, you missed it. But
oh,
that just means you have to go back. No big
yeah,
deal.
it just means I got to do it again. I got a burger out there.
No big
So,
deal. Just quit your job and go through hike again.
don't tempt me. 2 beard questions. What's
Yep.
the best thing you've ever stored in your beard?
Stored in my beard. Well, I think trash from the ground in Burning Man. I'm serious. Like
Elaborate.
we would because a big deal about Burning Man is don't leave trash, and like it's
Yeah.
windy out there. It's a desert. Trash would blow around, and we would pick up trash and just clip it into my beard, and I would just turn. I just had this trash beard. Seriously. There's
Please
also
tell me
like
there's a
beads
picture.
and paint and like wire and like feathers and there's all this crap, and it just turned into a trash beard eventually.
Oh, please tell me there's a beard for that. There's a picture for that somewhere.
There it might be somewhere. I'd have to dive into some hard drives that are like in a cubby hole somewhere, and I don't even know, but it's possible. Maybe I can find them for us.
Awesome. Last one. Best compliment you've ever received for your beard.
I mean, there's so many guys out there that have like normal. Again, I'm saying this with a guy that has a less large. It's still a pretty good beard right now. I mean,
It's still impressive, yeah.
but it's nothing like what it was. It was like down to my tatas, earlier this year. And when you have other bearded men who aspire to have a beard like that just can't grow a beard like that. Like they have something, but it just like either it doesn't connect to the mustache, like it grows in ratty on the sides. Like if I don't trim below my eyes, this thing grows up to my eyelids more or less, but I have this super, super like full mustache that other men just practically drool over, and they will come up to me and approach me and say, "Hey man, I just gotta say, great beard." And that's happened hundreds of times to the point where it never ceases to amaze me how often it can happen and how many times it can happen. And now that I don't have that big beard like that anymore, and another dude walks by that has a beard that's bigger than mine currently, or has a beard that is as big as my old one was, I now know what it feels like to be on the I wish my beard were as big as that guy's. But the thing is, I can grow mine back to that. These other people couldn't. They were just like, it's beard envy, or the smaller, it's just it's just funny.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking beard envy, beard envy.
There's nothing worse than hearing somebody walk up to you with a clean shaven face, and they're like, Dude, I used to have a beard like that, and I'm like, well, you don't anymore. So you can't really say it because it doesn't matter because I don't believe you. You got to go back. So I won't start a conversation with a bearded guy that has a beard bigger than me. Like, I used to have a beard that big because like I don't. You just don't. It just doesn't work. It's just like saying it's. I liken that conversation to being like like as a Marine, you have a lot of people that come up to you and be like, I almost joined the Marine Corps," and you're like, "Okay, buddy, all right, cool."
I'm sure you
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
So cool. Well, still, I'm going to say kick-ass beard.
yeah.
I can
Thanks,
still
man.
tell.
Yeah, you got
So
one, but it's hiding behind a microphone. I can't really see it all.
I got some pictures from what it looked like when I finished the trail, but again,
Yeah, yeah.
it was,
It's never the
maybe
same.
a quarter of that size.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
and I
So,
also
but
get like so. I have like red and blonde highlights where the hair around my mouth actually comes out red and blonde, and the hairs on the sides and underneath come out like brown and almost black. So it's this really, really rich in like color diversity. So it's like, and in summer, the sun really lightens it up and it kind of becomes this like Moses glowing like beard kind of situation. I love it.
nice. And
I
I got
I do
just
love it, I'm
a
not gonna
pepper
lie.
pop,
I'm very fortunate that
but
my DNA and my genetics allowed for this to happen because I don't do anything to maintain it. It's just I either am growing it or I'm not growing it, and it's just there's no work to be done.
cool deal. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Real Hiking Viking. This was a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
Before we go, last thing, you want to give any shout outs to anybody or anything? Your
Well,
website?
I would just love to say to everybody out there who's itching to hike, like, eh, the time will come, and the time for sticking inside is now, and that's it. That's all I have to say. The shout out is to anybody out there who who's less fortunate than we are, and we hope that this is over soon, and I hope that we all get the support and just love that we need right now. That's all.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. Thank you so much, brother. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll
Yeah, it
talk
was a great
soon.
time. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Take care, Viking.
All right. Peace.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Real Hiking Viking's a great dude. You can follow Real Hiking Viking on Instagram at The Real Hiking Viking, or check him out on his website, www.therealhikingviking.com. Our thanks to him for being on the show. Don't go yet. Want to hit on a few things real quick. First up, we're going to be back in a couple of weeks with our third show with backcountry navigation expert Andrew Skirka, the man who's widely known for laying down the first tracks on the Great Western Loop, which connects the PCT and the CDT in one single trip. Now, these days, Skirka is known for his off-trail adventures, including creating high routes in the Winds, the Sierras, and the Rockies. You don't want to miss this episode, as Skirka is going to give us his tips and tricks to backcountry navigation. Secondly, in case you missed the last show, be sure to go back and listen to our talk with Heather Anish Anderson, who has a ton of thru-hiking records to her name, including holding the current PCT self-supported speed record at 60 days. And finally, please give us some love and leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app. It helps us get noticed, and it lets us know what we can do to make the show even better for you. So thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you're all doing well and staying safe out there. For now, this is Shanty, and we'll see you next time on the Out and Back podcast presented by Gaia GPS. Take care, everyone.